everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Bantamweight Boxing Podcast. Pound for pound, the best boxing podcast around. Joined with me today, we have our first guest, the man whose opinions are more controversial than the case of Jeffrey Epstein itself. It's Yohan Waite. Say hello, Yohan.
Hello.
My next guest, the man who could sell sand to the Arabs. It's Jimmy. Say hi, Jim.
Hello, everyone.
And finally, we've got Danny Dyer's love child. It's Joe. Say hi, Joe.
Hello.
Okay, so let's get into this first episode. We've got introductions out of the way and onto the news. So the first of our 3 headlines, as always, we've got Errol Spence claims he has 3 fights left at welterweight before going up to super welterweight. These fights are Danny Garcia, Manny Pacquiao, and Terence Crawford. And he says he wants these 3 in this order. So, Yohan, over to you. I'm going to, instead of breaking down these fights, let's just do a quick prediction for each one. So I'm going to say both their names and you give me a response of who you think wins. So first of all, we've got Spence, Danny Garcia.
Spence,
Manny Pacquiao.
Don't make me say it, Spence.
Oh, controversial opinion. And then finally, Spence Crawford. Okay.
Ooh, controversial. Is that because it's Jimmy here? Is that because he's been in a very serious accident recently and you're worried that he may not have recovered from that? Because
he's recovered enough to beat Manny Pacquiao and Garcia. I think it'd be all right for Crawford. But all right, let's move on to the next headline. And this one is for you, Joe. Hughie Fury says he's open to put his world title hopes on hold to fight Dave Allen in a heavyweight British bust-up. Joe, would you pay real money to watch this on pay-per-view?
I'll tell you what, I think a better question is what world title is Hughie Fury chasing?
Yeah. Or maybe a better question is, how much could I actually pay you to watch these 2 fight?
that is PPV would be a bit of a joke. I'll tell you what, Mike, if I wanted to see this sort of fight, I wouldn't pay for it. I'd call Jim up and tell him to meet me in Croydon Weatherspoons with his mates, I think.
All right.
But when you've got the name Fury, to be fair, you're always going to pull a crowd. So I wouldn't put it past them both, that fight happening.
Yeah, I would enjoy it. We joke, but it would be a good little British heavyweight bash up, really.
Yeah, but maybe a nice undercard. I think get the juices flowing before the main event.
Yeah, I think that the only problem with it is just Hughie Fury is just such a boring fighter to watch.
Yeah.
He's just like, that's his main problem. He's not actually a bad fighter. He did well against Povetkin and other fighters like that, but his just style of just not engaging whatsoever.
I don't think it's just the style, because you could make similar criticisms to when Tyson Fury fought Klitschko. It's the fact that he has that style, but he doesn't win.
Yeah, he doesn't.
So it's not. Do you know what I mean? So it's.
Yeah, there's a case to say the Fury-Klitschko fight was actually quite a boring one. Like each fight, in terms of the amount of punches that were actually landed, wasn't very high. But because he got the win, you kind of overlooked the performance. But yeah, I think that's.
I think it's been overlooked with what's happened recently, at least.
Yeah.
But who wins though, Joe? Who wins, Dave Allen or Hughie Fury?
I think Hughie Fury is able to sort of manoeuvre enough to keep Allen's punches at bay, and he'll probably win that a point decision, I reckon.
Yeah,
if someone could get dropped in that, they're both big hitters, of course.
Yeah. I think it'd be I see quite a comfortable victory for Hughie Fury there. I think he's just overall just technically a lot better fighter than Dave Allen. But anyway, moving on to the final headline and the most important one. This is for you, Jim. Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury agreed terms on a 2-fight deal for 2021. So this is huge news, which has actually just come out today. But Jim, a slightly different question for you now, because I know everyone's going to be wanting to hear who wins this fight, Joshua Fury. But we've had this conversation a few times before it's been confirmed. And I think we all agree we'd probably give this one to Fury. But instead of asking that question, from Joshua's perspective, going into this fight, what do you think he needs to do to beat Tyson Fury?
Well, Christmas has come early, if that contract has been signed and the reports are true, because that is a mouth-watering clash. I think the odds are in Tyson's favour, but I think AJ will go into that fight very, very confident. Fury has been dropped multiple times in the past, and I think in the first Wilder fight, although Tyson wasn't in the greatest of shapes, I think there is definitely a blueprint there for AJ to win the fight. I can't ever see AJ winning that fight on points. It's going to be with the knockout or a TKO, but he's definitely got that power. And I think it's an intriguing matchup because, AJ is, he's in his prime. Tyson's in his prime. At the heavyweight level, anything can happen. And it's great to see two British fighters at the pinnacle of their careers fighting to unify the division. It's bloody exciting. Fingers crossed it happens.
Yeah, it is really exciting. But the worry is, AJ still needs to get through Pulev, and Tyson Fury obviously still needs to get through Wilder. I think we're all confident Fury could probably do that. But again, with Wilder, he's got that punch power. And if he knocks out Fury, oh God, it just kills such a great fight. But I was speaking to Joe about this earlier, and I was thinking from AJ's perspective, I'd probably, going into the Tyson Fury fight, probably go for a blitz knockout. I don't think I would try and wait for the points or anything, as you say, looking for the points win. I think I'd just put it on Tyson Fury from the get-go and try and get
Don't you think, though, that would just play to Tyson Fury's strengths? I mean, I find it difficult to see how AJ is going to make it competitive. I mean, his jab isn't going to work. Klitschko tried that. His power isn't going to work. Wilder tried that. I think the only way he can do it is make it a really dirty fight. From even pre-fight, in the way that he talks to Fury and to really try and get under Fury's skin. And then once they're in the ring together, just to be really all over him and fight on the inside and be as dirty as that. To me, just thinking about it today is the strategy that I would adopt.
Yeah, I really wouldn't want to be in AJ's corner for this fight because, as you say, either way you look at it, I think Fury just, apart from the out-and-out punching power, I think Fury tops him on most abilities. So I think it's a very difficult fight for AJ. And as you say, maybe going for the dirty tactics is the right move, but he's never done that. It's not an easy thing to learn, to be dirty and to talk dirty.
I agree, Mike. I don't think he's naturally like that. That doesn't fit with AJ's character to fight dirty. But I agree with Johan, that is probably the strategy that's going to yield the best results in fighting Fury. I think one of the things you shouldn't underestimate, though, AJ going into that fight is, every fight that man's had, he has been odds-on favourite. He's gone in there with the expectation of victory weighing very heavily upon his shoulders. Whereas when he walks into that ring with Tyson Fury, he's the underdog. The pressure's off. Everyone's expecting him to get beaten. And I just think that, and maybe a bit of overconfidence from Tyson Fury, a bit of pressure relief from AJ, one power punch. It's a close one.
Yeah, agree with that.
Yeah, it's very easy to write AJ off, isn't it? But it's going to be a very difficult fight. But moving on, I think we covered the headlines quite well there. Actually, one final thing. This is another thing me and Joe were talking about earlier. Is this fight going to happen in Wembley? Because it feels like this fight has to happen in Wembley. But there's something about my boxing heart which tells me the money is going to be too good in somewhere like Saudi Arabia or America. Johan or Joe,
it could happen on Mars as long as it happens. That's what I want to make sure. What I want to see is that it actually happens.
It can happen in my back garden as long as it happens.
Shout out to Street Beefs.
Yeah. Street Beefs, if he hears us, you're welcome on the podcast anytime. Or to fight in my back garden, for sure. All right. But I think, that's a fair answer. If it happens, I don't think anyone cares if they've got to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Completely.
But anyway, let's move on to the main discussion for this week. And we are looking at who is the current pound for pound best Southpaw. So we've all got our names. Who wants to kick it off? Am I going to move to Joe? Are you ready to kick this one off?
Yeah, I'm happy to get the ball rolling. My choice, Alexander Usyk, first one to spring to my mind. 17-0, 13 knockouts, 76% KO ratio, over 300 wins in the amateurs. Of course, the London 2012 Olympic gold springs to mind. The first cruiserweight in boxing history to hold all 4 WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO belts. But what is so significant to me is the manner in which he was able to achieve this. So he consecutively beat an American, Michael Hunter, in the States. He then beat German Marco Huck in Germany. Then he fought Bridis, a Latvian, in Latvia, destroyed him, and then finally went to Russia to conquer the Russian champ Gassiev. And of course, he unified the division. Another note on that is the fights between Gassiev, Bridis, and Hunter. All three of those names were undefeated before they got in the ring with Usyk. And that is just a magnificent stat in itself. But it doesn't stop there. He then came to the UK and smashed 7 shades of shit out of Eddie Hearn's Scowl Snuggle Muffin Tony Bellew. And we all love to see that. And you know what, Mike? We can talk about left-handers. We can talk about right-handers. I tell you what, Usyk's footwork alone, I think that could dance him out of any spot or bobber. So he's got to be pound for pound, definitely in the list. My number one, yeah.
No, definitely. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. And let's have a look at Usyk now. He's pretty much done everything you could ask for a cruiserweight, hasn't he? Like, as Joe said, not only is he unified, but to do it in the manner that he did in other people's back gardens, it's hard to make an argument against Usyk as not just the Southpaw pound for pound, but the pound for pound. But my main criticism of Usyk, and if you can criticize the man, because as I say, he's done so much, is more looking at him moving up to heavyweight, because this is where I think he solidifies himself as maybe one of the best fighters of all time if he can do a job in this group of heavyweights. And I just worry with him about his punch power in terms of moving up to heavyweight. I don't think he can gain the respect of heavyweights like Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua with that kind of punch power. But what would you say to that, Joe? You go for it.
No, I was just going to say about that punch power and the size of some of the other heavyweights. And I think it's easy to underestimate when we look at someone like Tyson Fury and people talk about his skill set. A lot of that skill set is based on his size. He's that big that he's able to command the ring and almost is able to be skillful because of that size. And I think that's the biggest problem that Usyk's going to face. I don't think it's individual punch power, though, of Usyk. I do think that he showed with the way that he knocked out Bellew that he does have power. I just think it's
overall size.
And what kind of heavyweight juggles?
I agree completely. You see him a lot of the cruiserweight fights, particularly against Gassiev. What he was able to do was sort of prohibit his opponent from establishing any sort of rhythm, and that was with a sort of high volume punch output. And like Mike is saying, if you've got these big guys like Chisora's throwing bombs, will he be able to command that respect? Will they think, I'm just going to march forward, guard up, and take these from him?
Yeah,
but it'd be very interesting.
I think he'll beat Chisora. I think even with Chisora's punch output, he'll beat him with his movement. But I think what I'm really trying to say is I think that Tyson Fury's skill set is probably overestimated. A lot of it is reliant on his actual size. That size is a big part of his game. And I think when he's fighting someone much smaller like Usyk, I mean, later on I'm going to talk about Pacquiao. And Pacquiao obviously famously shut out by Mayweather. But you have to look at the size of Pacquiao in comparison to Mayweather. You know, Usyk and Fury can fight at heavyweight, but Usyk isn't a heavyweight in the same way that Fury is.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right. Well, let's move on to you, Jim. Let's hear your case for your pound for pound Southpaw star.
He's the most explosive thing out of Ukraine since Chernobyl. It is Vasily Lomachenko. You can't talk about him without making reference to his amateur pedigree. Quite incredible, 396 wins from 397 bouts. The one solitary defeat. He didn't just avenge once, he avenged twice. He's not just a double Olympic gold medalist. He's won Olympic gold in 2 different weight categories. In his third fight, his third professional fight, he won a world title. And I think really what separates Vasily from a number of the other contenders on the podcast today is he is a multiple weight world champion, you know, not just one or two, but 3 weight world champion. You know, he doesn't just beat people up the same size as him. He beats people up that are considerably bigger than him. And it's not just the victories, it's also the style in which he glides to these victories. Every time you watch this guy fight, you learn something new about boxing. He is educational. He is an artist. There's no fighter on the planet that moves or throws punches like him.
You sound like you're about to start crying, Jim. This is great.
I think he is.
You know,
I'm glad this front camera is not on because I'm worried what he's doing with his other hand.
Yeah, it's emotional between us. But you know, I feel privileged to watch his boxing. He makes what can be a very gruesome sport look quite poetic at times.
Jesus.
And sorry, did I steal your line there, Johan?
Well, no. I agree with everything that you've said. The only thing that you've missed about Lomachenko is that he's an arrogant shit. That's the only thing you haven't said. And that's what I don't like him.
I think you cannot achieve greatness without arrogance. You know, you've got to have to reach the pinnacle of anything. You've got to have supreme confidence, and you've got to back that up. And I think what I like about Vasily is, you know, he can talk the talk, but he walks the walk. And you know what you've seen in his fights is an ability to adapt. You know, he's fought people that have roughed him up, hit him with low blows. He's fought some phenomenal fighters. You know, he's beat people like Gary Russell Jr., who are undefeated, skilled boxers, world-class fighters, and made them look mediocre. And that is the sign of true greatness.
I think also not only just beating them, you see with the Rigondeaux fight, he has made them quit on their stall. And that shows the persistent sort of annihilation of the other man, which is beautiful to watch.
The Lomachenko was quite a cool phase where everyone who was fighting him was just retiring on their stall.
Lomachenko.
That was serious.
I think the other thing with Vasily is the fact that he's proved that he can take a defeat and come back. And, you know, his one solitary defeat, you know, Salido, he fought Salido basically at welterweight while he was a featherweight. You know, he was weighing 147 pounds, and you know, he still beat him up, and he still lost on a split decision. And Salido has run from him ever since, and since retired. And I think, you know, greatness is about suffering defeat and coming back even stronger. And that was his second fight, and he's come back bigger and stronger. And I think, again, sign of a true champion is it's not how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. And I think in that fight, Vasily proved that, you know, that he can take a defeat, he can take a loss, and he'll come back better and stronger.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Very well put, Jim. Great argument for Vasily Lomachenko. And I think it's hard to really argue against Lomachenko in terms of being probably the pound for pound, because really his resume says it all, isn't it? Beating some of the best fighters around right now. And as you said yourself, the style in which he does it, it's brought something really new to the sport. This kind of Ukrainian tap dancing style is beautiful to watch. But anyway, let's move on to you, Johan. Our third argument. Let's hear what you've got to say.
So Pacquiao, for me, won a split decision over the previously undefeated Keith Thurman to take the WBA super welterweight belt and become, at 40 years old, the oldest welterweight champion in boxing history. 4-time welterweight world champion and the only fighter to have been a world champion for 4 successive decades, fighting 30 world champions, titles across 8 divisions, lineal across 5. All he needs now is to get assassinated and he'll get a statue. If you're a small, aggressive man like me, then you have to choose Pacquiao. He's done more for the self-esteem of small men than anyone else in boxing. Someone who makes growing up with no shoes sound like a fairy tale. Someone who beat people up sporting orange highlights and a moustache. That early Pacquiao, that stick monster freak show, jumping in like he's on curtain runners and grunting like a tennis player. The only fighter who hasn't lost his edge by not looking sinister and smiling at standoffs. He has his losses, knocked out by Marquez, shut out by Mayweather, but he is only a little guy. Growing up as a small man, I didn't have any positive role models. Now small men everywhere can stand tall looking up to Senator Pacquiao.
I do love those ginger curtains he rocks in his early.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm sporting them tonight.
He's like a Japanese Backstreet Boy.
What is freaky about him though is to watch him throughout the years and how he literally starts off as you say, like a stick insect, and now you look at him and he's absolutely huge.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could shit bigger than the early Pacquiao.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, when you hear about his early life and
well, didn't his dad eat his dog? There's a quote about him talking that his dad ate his dog.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I shouldn't laugh. That's pretty brutal. But,
yeah, I don't know why you're laughing.
Don't knock it until you've tried it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I think when you were talking about Usyk and Loma, there's not much I can say to criticize, but other than the fact that they haven't had the amount of time. When you look at Pacquiao and he's fought 30 world champions, it's 62 fights. Well, 62 was it? 62 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws or something his record is. I mean, he's fought for a hell of a long time. So his pedigree is proven. Whereas I think that despite the amateur career, Usyk and Loma still have some fights to come that will prove whether they are as good as they now appear.
Yeah, isn't Pacquiao is it 8 weight world champion or something ridiculous?
Yeah.
That's incredible. That is just incredible.
It's completely incredible. Yeah.
He is a genetic freak.
Like Jim was saying with the losses and how a fighter comes back from a loss. When you see how Pacquiao when he's lost, and how he's come back from that. This little wonder why he was voted the Philippine Man of the Year or whatever it was, and then became the people's champ party, and is now a senator.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt that Pacquiao is an absolute legend. I think his longevity in the sport, in a sport where your career can be over by your early 30s, to be a world champion at 40 is quite incredible. I think for me, his biggest ever fight, he lost. That's the one thing that really rankles with me. The fight of the century, Mayweather Pacquiao, that would have been his coronation as king for me, but he lost. And for me, that's why Loma takes it.
I don't know if that means that Loma should take it for that reason, but I have to admit that it is difficult to get your head around. How can someone be a great fighter when in the moment that could have made them great, they didn't perform? I think the difference with
Pacquiao is there was multiple moments where he was made great, wasn't it? It wasn't just Mayweather, which was his biggest fight. He had there was plenty of other incredible.
But it's
victories.
just difficult because you focus on Mayweather because, as Mayweather says, TBE, the best ever.
Yeah.
50-0. It's hard to argue against that. So when you've got the best ever,
I'll tell you what, Jeff Horn wasn't TBE.
that was a robbery. That was that's a fair argument. Well, I'll move on to myself, and I've gone for the truth. I've gone for the truth, man. Pound for pound, Errol Spence. It's got to be. To start off my argument, I think I've got to go with again, not a huge amateur background, but I'm starting my argument with the point that he's fighting in the best division in boxing right now. I'd say it's the most stacked is the welterweight division. So my argument would be, if I can prove he is the best in that division, well, he's got to be pound for pound then. because I'd say if we look at Errol Spence as a whole, I think right now he's probably one of the most all-rounded and most balanced kind of fighters. There's very few weaknesses you can find in his game. If we look at just like his physical attributes, his punching power, 26 fights, 21 KOs. I know he hasn't really got that one punch knockout power, but he's got that kind of punching power we were talking about with Golovkin, I think in the last episode, where he kind of wears you down, a lot of body shot punches, wears his opponent down. We saw that with Kell Brook is probably the best example of that, and basically finished off Kell Brook's career, in my opinion. And also was able to drop Porter in their fight, which very few people have been able to do. And then, carrying on with the physical attributes, you want to talk about durability. Well, this man was in a car crash and basically came out untouched. So I don't think, if a $1 million supercar can't kill him, I don't think any man born of his mother is going to do any damage to the truth, man. So durability, he ticks that. And then the final part I'll say on the physical kind of side is his sheer size. And we heard Johan earlier in this podcast talk about how important size is. And, Errol Spence is 5'10" as a welterweight. Apparently he walks around at 170 pounds.
Jim, just so you know, that's like twice your height.
He walks around at about 170 pounds. And, if you think the welterweights are fighting at 140, he's cutting.
That is insane.
Yeah,
that is insane.
The size advantage he has on his opponents is just incredible. And you can see it in the fights. He bullies opponents. He pushes them around. He's always got the reach on them. And, I think people talk about Lennox Lewis when he fought, how important his physical strength was in a lot of his victories. And I think you see that definitely with Errol Spence. But then not only the physical attributes he ticks the boxes for, but also I think his technical ability and his style. He's a very technical fighter, very good counter puncher. Again, uses that reach to get out of range, lets them come in, hits them. So incredibly technical, and also he's got that dog in him. We saw that in the Porter fight. Whenever Porter fights someone, it's going to be a rough and tumble. It's going to be a lot of inside elbows and shoulders and whatever. And he showed he could hold his own and get through that fight. So, and finally, I probably look at his jab. His jab's great body shot work, lethal combos. So yeah, I think if you're looking at skill and physical attributes, I think he's probably one of the most all-rounded fighters out there, and that's probably my argument for why he's probably pound for pound best southpaw. Because I think he beats Manny Pacquiao. I think.
Well, you made me say that earlier, and I'm not supposed to be talking about Pacquiao.
I was going to say, people are probably going to be questioning that slightly before you even got onto your guy. You already said.
Yeah, but I think for me, I was looking at it from if Pacquiao fought Spence now, but when I'm doing the list, I'm looking at it as kind of looking back on their. If you're looking back on their career,
pound for pound, great. And Pacquiao's always going to be up there, no matter what the date is.
Yeah.
I think I rate Errol Spence highly, but right now, pound for pound, he's only done it in one weight division where he's a giant compared to everyone else. For me, I don't doubt his qualities and his pedigree, but he can't be pound for pound king when he's done it in one weight division where he towers over everyone else.
Yeah, no, I think it's a hard argument alongside fighters like Lomachenko and Usyk because they really have cleared out their divisions, and Lomachenko is about to become unified if he beats that Lopez, and so it is a difficult argument in that sense. But Spence has got two of the belts, IBF and WBC, against two very good opponents, and he's on route to take the reps,
I reckon in the next 2 years he could be pound for pound king. I think he'll clear out super welterweight. I think he's only going to really come into trouble when he starts hitting those middleweights, but I think he'll clear out Pacquiao. I even think he'll probably beat Crawford. I think that'll be a great fight. But
oh really?
Yeah. I just think he's coming of age now, and he's maturing, and beating people like Sean Porter. That was a proper fight. That was the proper time. Yeah, he'd been in a war. He's outclassed everyone else really. But I think that fight could be the making of him. And I just think Crawford.
That's the fight that everyone wants to see.
Yeah.
Crawford Spence. That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful.
Yeah,
fight.
that
in terms of technical ability, that is the best fight in boxing. It's way better than something like Fury AJ. But unfortunately, because of the PBC or whatever the stuff going on in America with the TV companies, it looks unlikely that we're going to see that fight for a long time.
It's crazy. I think it's crazy to think that we're talking about where we were before, talking about the Crawford and Lomachenko fight, both these names mentioned, to think about the size difference there. I think that even sort of illuminates Jimmy's argument even more. The fact that he can even mention them two in the same breath, the difference in size between them, just shows what sort of level Lomachenko is on technically.
Yeah. When you see him against Luke Campbell, he outboxed Luke Campbell for 12 rounds, and it was like how I'd box Yohan, the size difference there. A far smaller man punching 7 shades of shit out of a bigger man. But you've got to have some skill to do that. You've got to have some skill to do that.
Well, Pacquiao did it to Margarito, didn't he? Margarito must have been about 5'10".
Yeah,
I don't remember, but
I think
so he can beat bigger people. That's for sure.
Yeah. Going back to the Campbell fight, but I think what we saw with that was a real sign that I don't think Lomachenko can go any higher in terms of weight. Not that he needs
if
to.
Luke Campbell's making it that difficult, I mean, I'm no disrespect to Luke Campbell, he's a good British fighter, but you could see it in there. He really wore him down over the 12 rounds, and it was tough for Loma to get out of there.
I think that was one of Lomachenko's probably hardest fights, apart from the one that he lost. When I watched that fight, I was not shocked because, as we say, Luke Campbell is a gold medalist, very close fight with Linares that he nearly won there. He's a very good fighter, but that really showed that the size difference of Luke Campbell, Lomachenko, there's not much further he can go in terms of weight, and there's nothing wrong with that. I prefer a fighter nowadays to clear out their division. I don't like this new jumping up and down. I like to see a fighter become a unified in their division and move up, but that's my personal preference.
They just can't say no to the paychecks, I think, Mike.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair. If the super fights are there, they're gonna go for them. But I think we've all stated our cases, so maybe moving on to some honourable mentions.
What I should say before you say honourable mentions is I think that one of the things that's been proven is that of all of those people on the list, the only one who's had enough fights really to say they're the best southpaw is Pacquiao. Yeah, I think the others have still got more to prove.
Yeah, that's definitely the main counter argument against Errol Spence is he's on the way, but he's not established himself as a pound.
We'll have the conversation again when he's 40.
When he's 40,
if he's still going.
Pacquiao would definitely still be going, that's for sure. No doubt about that. But I think in terms of an all-time pound for pound, southpaw, I think it goes to Pacquiao. In terms of current, choosing between Usyk and Lomachenko is one is basically just a bigger version of the other, isn't it?
Yeah, they're made in the same test tube.
Yeah, definitely. They are both robots.
I think Usyk was exposed to more radiation.
Yeah.
And they gave him contemporary dance lessons or something.
But all right, so moving on to honourable mentions, and it's that man again, the one we can't stop mentioning, Tyson Fury. Is he an honourable mention with these guys? Can he hang with these guys in terms of a pound for pound southpaw? Or is the heavyweight division a bit of a joke in that sense? It doesn't seem to get the credit a lot of the time. Was that the response?
I mean, if you're talking about how he does switch to that southpaw stance quite a lot, I think that almost heightens an argument in fact that he's not traditionally southpaw stance, but the way you see Billy Joe Saunders do it as well, they can switch between. That does add a lot to his game, and for a lot of the Klitschko fights, certainly he was in that southpaw stance, and he did cause him a lot of problems with that swinging right hook, toe to toe with Klitschko. He's definitely on the shout because he's got to be the best heavyweight at the minute, and we see him fight in that stance. So certainly, I mean, maybe a bit as a heavyweight, then Fury probably would beat him. So if we're going along those lines,
maybe a better question would be. Nowadays in boxing, if we're looking at our list right now, we're not just looking at the best southpaws. We're probably looking at pound for pound the best fighters in the division, full stop. In the world, full stop. Bar maybe Canelo and a few others, Terence Crawford. But then again, Terence Crawford can switch to the southpaw stance. Is there an argument to say that modern day boxers or boxers coming through, there's an incentive now to teach people to fight in this kind of southpaw stance?
Aren't both Loma and Usyk, they're not naturally left.
Yeah, that's the point.
Through juggling or something, they made them juggle.
It's the same. It's the same with It's the same with the two gypsies as well, with Billy Joe Saunders and Tyson Fury. They know how awkward it can be to fight.
Yeah, they kind of use it as it's like a
secret weapon,
punch selection. Do you know what I mean? It's like part of their arsenal,
Yeah, because those four fighters that we just named, punch power is not. Although we know they all have it, it's not an essential part of their game. A lot of it is about their technical ability, and it seems to be a lot of that. Well, kind of some of that may stem from this kind of awkward southpaw stance, which people have to begin the fight by trying to figure out before. But who knows? It seems that there might be something behind that in terms of the being taught as a southpaw.
Well, and you're saying it will become more of a popular way of fighting?
Yeah, potentially. I think
isn't it big in Cuba as well? They do it in Cuba as well.
Yeah. I think the future of boxing does seem to be with the kind of Ukrainians, isn't it? So I think we may see an influx now. I'm not sure if Derevchenko, if he's a southpaw as well. I'm not sure, but I think
it's all about adaptability, really. It's like any great fighter, whether they're switching to southpaw or orthodox, or changing their tactics. It's about being able to identify how you're going to defeat this man standing in front of you. And I don't think.
Do you think that's what makes people like Lomachenko so special? That they seem to, you can almost see them thinking through the rounds. There seems to be a lot of thought that goes into the pre-fight about how they're going to fight an opponent, and then just at the kind of in the very immediate fight, they're able to change tactics as well. Is that what makes them so special?
It's they've got a game plan, but then they're not afraid to change it. And you see that with Lomachenko, and you see it with Fury. For the first couple of rounds, they will feel out their opponent and make sure they've got the right game plan. And if it's not, they'll adapt and they'll change. And that is the key to success. It's being able to have a plan, but also being adaptable, so you can change if the tactics that the fighter you're against has employed a slightly different approach to what you're anticipating. You can think on your feet and adjust your style accordingly. And I think Lomachenko's Tyson Fury and Floyd Mayweather as well springs to mind when you think about fighting.
Well, it's who I was thinking about but for me it seems to be very different with Floyd, that with Lomachenko, his thinking happens in a way. He how can I put it? He's still very much in the fight and throwing punches as he's thinking, whereas Mayweather seems to do it absolutely effortlessly. He kind of almost is as if he's watching things in slow motion.
It's a sixth sense that he's got.
Yeah, he's able to pick people apart in a way that might not be gripping, like when you see Lomachenko almost thinking with his fists. It might not be as gripping as that, but it's almost more powerful when you sit back and you think what Mayweather's doing.
And I agree completely. And what you're saying with the thinking with the fists, and Usyk does the same as Lomachenko. It's sort of controlling the range and the tempo.
Well, thinking with your feet is probably a better.
Probably feet, yeah, exactly. It is the footwork, keeping the correct distance at all time. No, absolutely. But Mayweather almost does it effortlessly.
Yeah, I mean, countless people, obviously, they say how boring it is to watch, but obviously it's on one level it is very boring, but it's also completely remarkable to see somebody who, in the face of someone trying to punch their face in, is able to have that level of composure, and not only that level of composure, but to think in the midst of that. And that is like a great general, that has that ability when all the madness and mayhem is going on around you, to be able to think clearly and calmly like Mayweather does. It's a very special gift.
Would you say that's possibly why?
What's this about?
Would you say that's possibly why Lomachenko though is so exciting and is such a highly rated boxer, because he does, similar to what you were saying, Floyd does there, but does it in such an entertaining way to watch. Like anyone would choose to
Yeah,
fight.
completely.
In my opinion, anyone would choose to watch Lomachenko over a Floyd Mayweather fight. So it adds to the greatness.
But one of the key
Rob
reasons for that is that if Floyd Mayweather had another 50 fights, we know that he'd win every single one. Whereas if you gave Lomachenko another 50 fights, we're not entirely sure. And we know that it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a gripping ride. Whereas with Mayweather, it's or maybe it's like a fine wine.
He'll do what he needs
enjoyable.
to do with Mayweather. That's the bottom line. Whatever way he'll leave that ring with his hands held high.
Yeah. So going back to Manny Pacquiao, and going back to your fighter, with Manny Pacquiao, it's kind of just a joyride at the moment for us fans and for him because he's done everything he possibly could do.
The last 4 decades have been a joyride.
Yeah. So where do you think it comes to an end for Pacquiao? What is, he doesn't need to do anything more. He doesn't need to prove anything.
He's too powerful now. Like I said at the beginning, once he's assassinated and they put up a statue,
he's waiting for him to be assassinated. Yeah,
like a god. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It's interesting because after so many of his fights, you could have drawn certain conclusions about what the future looks like for Pacquiao. But he's a special guy, and he's making it up himself. He's in charge of his destiny. I think it just we'll wait and see. Hopefully he'll surprise us. Hopefully he'll do something interesting. Hopefully he'll fight Triple G. That's an interesting fight. We talked about, I think, in the last podcast.
Yeah, I think we thought it was a joke when I read it out. But apparently it's actually quite serious.
It's the real deal. Because I think that's a fun, interesting fight that both fighters can commit to at the stage of their stage that they're at. Because in a way it's a completely meaningless fight, but in the same way neither have got anything to lose, and it's an interesting one. You've got a very quick fighter with a high output of punches, and you've got a big slugger. Yeah. I think Triple G. I think Triple G is just too big.
Yeah, for him. No, you would think that, but if there's anyone who's going to pull it off from a welterweight moving up, it is going to be your boy Manny Pacquiao. But moving to you, Joe, about Usyk now, looking at him moving up to the heavyweights, what do you think his path is now? So he's got Chisora next. In your view, do you think he can hang with the heavyweights? Do you think he could? I'd probably back him to beat Chisora, but I think that's probably where it ends for me. But what about yourself?
Yeah, so he made his debut against Witherspoon, was it? And he done well. He did do well, was able to dance around and keep him at bay. Obviously, when you start to get to the bigger hitters and even the bigger fellas, when we're talking about Fury, Wilder, and of course AJ, it starts to get more difficult. And you see in the Gassiev fight, he does get caught flush, hit on the chin a few times.
Yeah, but Gassiev's a heavyweight as well,
He's a big man, but we're talking super freaky, like 6'7" motherfucker.
Yeah. We're talking
he's a big guy, but
but don't underestimate. Usyk, he's fucking game, right? He wants this.
He's seen something. He's seen something.
Yeah, Mike, you talk about
he saw
it.
What Ruiz saw in terms of Joshua, because he's always talking about
the chink in the armor. Yeah, they saw the chink in the armor. But you talk about this transition, Mike, and really, we've only ever seen Evander Holyfield successfully pull it off, and he is really one of the all-time greats, you've got to say. But looking back a couple of years, we saw him against Joe Joyce, and you could argue Joe Joyce, obviously, lack of professional fights, but he is knocking with those big boys. He's sparring Anthony Joshua, and we see
he's a huge.
Him. So
he's a huge punch resistance guy. So if he could hang with him, then I'm sure there's an argument for him to hang with.
And also, he's got God on his side, and he.
I think they all have, though, haven't they?
They all have.
You need some sort of deity to keep you going against these big fellas.
Yeah. I think with Usyk, I think Usyk does have a good chance against AJ. Not a good chance, but I think he has trouble. I think, but especially
whatever
for me,
you mentioned, he gives them all trouble.
I think, especially for me, it's AJ. I think when we've seen AJ come up against smaller guys who have moved around in front of him and not stayed as a target who just stands in front of him, it's caused if you look at the Takam fight, you look at the Ruiz fight,
and even Povetkin in there, Mark.
And Povetkin, don't forget about until AJ pulled that punch from the gods. It was but
Povetkin Povetkin looked scared the whole time. He was waiting to get hit hard and then give up.
Yeah. But with the paycheck.
The truth is, though, I think it's easy to the first fight with Ruiz, I think it's a problem for all of us when we're thinking about the future of AJ. Until he distances himself from the way that he lost that fight, I think it's clouding our judgment. But we're saying things about AJ because we've just got that in the back of our mind. But
True.
you know, lots of fighters have slip-ups like that, and he might come back.
Yeah, look at
bigger and
Lewis.
stronger.
If you're talking about heavyweights, he had some awful shock losses, didn't he? And then he came back even better. So that could be the case with AJ. But what does worry me is when I saw him in that Ruiz rematch, every time Ruiz touched him, and I mean touched him on the top of the head, he looked shaky. He looked very shaky. But that could just be the first fight back. And I back him very strongly against Pulev. I think Pulev is all right for AJ.
Completely.
I don't even want to see it. I really don't want to see it. I don't think anyone wants to see it. I want to skip to the Fury fight. But, you know, the straight stand-up 1-2. He's a B-Tech Klitschko, isn't he? He's a fucking... and that's a compliment. Do you know what I mean?
But in a way, though, those are the kinds of fights that we want to see AJ in, because when he fought against Klitschko with that style was perfect, Clash of the Titans, all of that stuff. Yeah. Those are the kinds of people. And unfortunately, you've just got two quite strange other heavyweights in Fury and in Wilder. They're not a Klitschko type classic type fighter. So it's kind of it's a difficult one. Who do you put AJ up against to get the best out of him?
I think the thing with AJ, what is probably going to benefit him in his next few fights is he's finally started to travel a bit. I think one of the factors, I'm not saying it was the main factor, but it was definitely a mitigating factor, was the fact that he'd never fought in the US. So, you know, that is the mecca of boxing. You know, that's where most of the legends have cemented their careers. And, you know, you could see from the ring walk that going into a hostile environment, it's something he's never encountered before. You know, Saudi Arabia was slightly different, but again, it was adapting to a new surrounding, a different environment. I think the fact now that he's had a couple of fights out of the UK where he has got godlike status, you know, when he was fighting in the O2, filling out the arena, you know, he came in like Apollo Creed in Rocky IV, and, you know, he loved it. And it was a bit too much, you know, it was a bit too much hype. Whereas now he's been to the desert Saudi Arabia, he's been out to the US.
But also the circumstances that he went to the desert, because it was all on the line. So that's a huge amount of pressure. In the second Ruiz fight, that was a huge amount of pressure that he was under.
Yeah, and I think that's why, I think you're spot on, and I think that's why, Michael, he looked so nervous, because you knew that was his career. It was all on the line there. If he got beat by the fat chubby guy again, credibility's gone. Because he got beat up badly in that first fight. It wasn't. He didn't go out.
I had to watch that fight at least 3, 4, 5, maybe more times before I would accept what my eyes were seeing. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Well, as Johan said, it gave hope to all the fat boys like me out there that we could beat up any person.
I wouldn't try it though, Mike. Be careful.
I would not. Yeah, I'm not going to pick a fight.
Don't cancel your gym membership just yet.
Yeah. I'm not going to pick a fight with the next 6'8" guy I see, but it did give me some hope. But to round it up, let's talk. I've asked Johan and Joe this question, but over to you, Jimmy. For Lomachenko, he's got that fight with Teofimo Lopez. That's to unify. I think it's the lightweight division
It's the lightweight, yeah.
If he wins this fight now, can he just retire? Is it, you know, are we going to want anything more from Lomachenko?
I don't think he's still got a number of fighting years left in him. I think he'll go on, but once he's unified the lightweight division, I think the fights could be Gervonta Davis, but Mayweather's come out and said, you know, he's not going to let Gervonta fight him until he's old and weak, because he's that good. So there's probably
the Mayweather way.
Yeah, it's probably not a huge amount left for him, because I agree with you what you said earlier. I think lightweight, that's not his natural weight. You know, fighting at lightweight is, you can see that it's not his natural weight. So if he unifies that division, it's going to be very difficult for him to eclipse that. So, but we'll see.
I just think it's one of the shittest things in the world that such a talented fighter is so small.
It's so really as well. They make absolute peanuts as well. Like they make fucking nothing. Like
he gets the purse for his fights are like £1 million. He's lucky, you know. Maybe later on now he's probably getting like 1.5.
But even if, you know, he goes on and achieves everything that you can achieve in the weight divisions he's capable of fighting in, I bet you 10, 20 years go by, no one even remembers his name, despite how talented he is, because of his size and the divisions he fought in.
I guess what creates greatness is when you're in an era. Well, yeah, but when you're heavyweight, but you've also got those household names, you know, and you just, unfortunately for Loma, you just don't have those memorable, whether they be characters or household names. You just don't get the same volume.
Yeah, the people you fight is as important as the fighter that you are.
Also, it's the talk you talk at the same time. The man doesn't speak English, I don't think. And
his English. Well, his English is slightly better than Yoan's, but
I understand him a lot clearer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
As Johan said, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's what you were saying is a good point, Johan, about the idea of the dance partner. You know, look at someone like Eubank and Nigel Benn, right? These guys were great fighters, but nowhere near the level of someone like Lomachenko. But
if we're going to start talking about them, though, the tears are coming into my eyes now.
Yeah.
Simply the best.
The best ring walk.
Sorry, I'm there.
No, you're just reminding me. I think I made a mistake in one of the previous podcasts of saying that Nassim had the best ring entrance. I think it was definitely Chris Eubank for sure.
I think Chris Eubank criticised Nassim Hamed for copying him and trying to take.
Nassim Hamed cut his lip in the airport because they had a fight. So they were going for like a W.
There's no way Prince Nassim got close enough to
Nassim Hamed,
cut his lip.
It's probably not the story now for this podcast, but they Nassim Hamed, Eubank had just lost to, I think, Calzaghe on Nassim's undercard, and he must have said, "Oh, do you like my belt?" Because he had just lost his, and then Eubank squared up to him, and then Nassim clipped him, but didn't hit him flush, but hit his big lip and cut open his lip. And I think Frank Warren got in the way of it escalating further, but.
I saw like a round table, all boxers from like the 90s, like middleweights, were having a discussion, and Eubank really calmly, when they talked about the Calzaghe fight, he said, "Oh, he hit me so hard that I shit my pants," and he said it so calmly that everyone else around the table just like looked. There's like complete silence for 5 seconds because he just said it as if it was the most normal thing in the world.
Could you relate to that, Yo, and shitting yourself at work?
Well, I've just done it now.
Well, on that note, and shit himself, I think we could possibly round this podcast out. I think we've all given very strong arguments, with Usyk, Errol Spence, Lomachenko, and Manny Pacquiao. We're not just talking about the best southpaws here. We're talking about probably some of the best fighters for the next 50 odd years or whatever, and currently now. So well done, guys. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please remember to like and subscribe. Goodbye. Does everyone want to say goodbye before we cut off?
Goodbye. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Take care.
Peace out.
Peace out. Stay safe.